Hey friends, welcome to the clown world. Now I know a lot of people have been talking about Kamala Harris lately. The big thing is that she's the least popular vice president in American history, with a 28% approval rating in one of the latest polls, a number which has literally never been seen or never been touched by any vice president. Something to, really be proud of for Kamala Harris. And the response from all of these Twitter activists and Kamala Harris has of course been identity politics. The only reason she's unpopular is because of the pigmentation of her skin and the fact that she's a woman. Is that the case, or is that just a massive cope from the left who just cannot accept reality that Kamala Harris is a very unlikable, unelectable political figure? Well, we're going to find that one out in this video. Sometimes things get memory holds or things get lost through history, through time, especially in the digital age where news just moves so quickly. Let's really put things into perspective and let's quantify this whole thing. Let's create a timeline of why Kamala Harris is just such a loathsome individual and politician. The question is Kamala Harris the worst vice president in American history because America is an inherently bad place with terrible people who can't accept a woman of color as VP? Or is Kamala Harris Kamala Harris? Alright, so firstly, what we have to cover is Kamala Harris's history. She's not somebody who came onto the scene in 2020. Kamala Harris has been in politics forever, and before she was a Democrat senator, she was a prosecutor and a district attorney. And this is probably the dark cloud that follows Kamala Harris more than anything, her track record as a prosecutor. I guess the example we can make here is, did Kamala Harris's campaign to become the Democrat presidential nominee crash and burn because of the pigmentation of her skin, because of her gender, or because of her prosecution record that Tulsi Gabbard very accurately described?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
So a politician who Democrats claim to be more woke than Bernie Sanders, having a more left-wing voting record in the Senate than Bernie Sanders, was actually a prosecutor with a very questionable record, or an inconsistent record, in relation to her stated politics or political views. Inside Kamala Harris's polarizing record as a prosecutor, she may tout herself as a progressive prosecutor, but Kamala Harris's record as a California prosecutor suggests otherwise. Harris made history on Tuesday. As California's Attorney General from 2011 to 2017, she refused to endorse a 2015 bill calling for a special prosecutor to investigate deadly police shootings. She also rejected calls from civil rights groups to investigate deadly police shootings in Los Angeles and San Francisco, following the 2014 police-involved killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. In 2015, Harris required body cameras for California's Department of Justice agents, but didn't support legislation mandating them for all police officers. The senator's history as San Francisco DA from 2004 to 2011 also has been scrutinized. Shortly after taking the job, she sparked a decade-long feud with police unions for declining to pursue the death penalty for a gang member who murdered San Francisco police officer Isaac Espinoza. She also began prosecuting parents of habitually truant kids, calling the issue of students skipping school as tantamount to a crime, even amid criticism that the policy disproportionately targeted low-income people of color. One of Harris's worst scandals came in 2010, when a technician was caught skimming coke from a crime lab and mishandling evidence. A judge ruled her office failed to disclose that information to defense attorneys, causing more than 600 drug-related cases to get tossed out. That same year, Harris opposed an initiative in the state to legalize cannabis, despite now supporting such legislation. During her tenure as Attorney General, at least 1,560 people were thrown behind bars for marijuana-related offenses from 2011 to 2016. The list goes on and on and on. You guys get the gist of it. She was that justice system that disproportionately targeted minority individuals. She was that DA who sent people to jail for non-violent drug offenses. And then she had the audacity to go on Charlemagne the God show and say this.
And I inhale. I did inhale. It was a long time ago. But yes.
I know you have to go. They say you have to go. I just wanted to
I
ask-
just broke news.
I mean, was it in college? See, I like stuff like that. That's a real honest answer.
Real.
Was it a blunt or joint?
It was a joint.
Hey.
Yeah.
You remember the high?
I do.
What were you
What's your
listening to
favorite
when you was high? What was on? What song was
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, definitely Snoop. Tupac, for
Tupac.
sure. For
What do you
sure.
listen to now? What's your favorite hip hop artist now? What's your favorite artist?
You know who I really love is Cardi B.
You like Cardi B?
I really do.
No valid criticism, though, right, folks? It's just ma-identity politics. People don't like her because she's a woman of color. Give me a break. Even Vice News reported on Kamala Harris as prosecutors sent this innocent man to prison. So Kamala Harris put an innocent man in jail, and then when he was appealing the charges, the person who was fighting to keep him there was Kamala Harris and her office, despite the fact that there was no credible evidence that he was guilty, and the fact that she only ever showed up to court when she could have used it for her own public image. As some sort of massive career win as such a prosecutorial hawk just goes to show her complete disregard for human life whatsoever, and her sole focus always being on career advancement. This is probably the main reason why people dislike Kamala Harris, not because of skin color or gender. I mean, take a look at these polling numbers from the 2020 Democrat primary. Kamala Harris was hovering as the third most popular candidate for about the first 3 months of the nomination process. This moment right over here, it's kind of hard to distinguish Kamala Harris through all of these colors, so I'll bring this into Photoshop and make it easier for you guys. The purple-pink line is Kamala Harris. This point right over here is when Tulsi Gabbard exposed Kamala Harris's prosecutor record in front of millions of viewers in that clip that I showed you guys earlier. This sharp decline into absolute nothingness, into dropping out of the race because she didn't have the funds to keep going anymore, was not caused by sexism, misogyny, or racism. It was caused by her track record. People view Kamala Harris as a power-hungry career opportunist. Insert scandal number 2. How 29-year-old Kamala Harris began an affair with powerful San Francisco politician Willie Brown, then 60 and married, who appointed her to 2 lucrative positions only to dump her after he was voted first black mayor of the city. 29-year-old Kamala Harris dated 60-year-old Willie Brown, this guy, who then just magically appointed her to 2 lucrative positions in government, leading to her position as district attorney. Now, the next reason why people deeply dislike Kamala Harris probably has something to do with her what seems to be a complete inability to, I guess we can describe it as, relate to basic human emotion. We all know Kamala's famous cackle. Now, whether almost like a nervous tick or not, Kamala seems to laugh even when confronted with tragedy. Here is Kamala laughing for some reason when talking about slavery and injustices that have been done to indigenous people.
Human beings should not be treated that way, and as we all know, it also evoked images of some of the worst moments of our history where that kind of behavior has been used against the indigenous people of our country, has been used against African Americans during times of slavery.
Here's Kamala Harris laughing after receiving a question about stranded Americans in Afghanistan after the failed withdrawal.
What's your response to reports of Americans?
Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about 2 things. First, Afghanistan.
Here's Kamala Harris laughing after receiving a question about visiting the southern border during the peak of the southern border crisis.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
And here's Kamala Harris laughing after being confronted by Lester Holt on whether she'll ever end up visiting the border at all.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance.
The constant cackling, laughing at tragedy, and brushing off major crises as if they're nothing. I haven't visited the southern border. Well, I haven't been to Europe either. Doesn't exactly make you seem like an empathetic, caring, compassionate person. And I mean, honestly, if we're talking about favorability and likability in general, well, this isn't exactly a great selling point.
Poor hubby. Poor hubby.
Nah.
and of course her sassy, arrogant debating style, as we saw during last year's vice presidential debate, not exactly a selling point either.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well,
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay.
And then when it comes to Kamala Harris in 2021 as acting vice president, well, most people seeing her as just not up to the task. Vice President Kamala Harris was tasked with fixing the southern border crisis, as the U.S. was on record pace for over 2 million illegal border crossing apprehensions in a single year. Kamala Harris, for the first 6 months of this ongoing crisis, literally laughed at the idea of visiting the southern border. Of course, as you saw earlier, and in the case with Lester Holt, responding quite arrogantly, well, I haven't visited Europe either, as if they're related at all. But then finally, as the political pressure started to mount to an uncontrollable degree, Kamala Harris finally chooses to go visit the southern border. And what does she do? Well, of course, in Kamala Harris public relations strategy style, she turns it into a photo op instead of a genuine visit to the southern border. Kamala Harris touring, quote, border spot hundreds of miles away from actual crisis. Kamala Harris does her little political photo op in El Paso, Texas, instead of the Rio Grande Valley, which has over 230% more crossings. Definitely a genuine effort to actually make a change. Nothing but political pandering, obviously, as seen by her political flip-flop on the issue in general, campaigning throughout the Democratic primary process as essentially being pro-open border, but all of a sudden changing her tune quite spectacularly to the dismay of her liberal voters, the moment this mounting crisis starts to affect her political brand.
At the same time, I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border. There are legal methods by which migration can and should occur.
Trying to get elected as a Democrat and pandering to soft-hearted liberals, open borders and free healthcare for illegal migrants. After winning the election,
do not come. Do not come.
Completely disingenuous, pretending to do something about an issue that Americans care deeply about, but really only responding in the first place because it's affecting your political brand, and not actually doing anything but just turning it into a disingenuous photo op. Then after said disingenuous photo op, planning a trip to South American countries, specifically the Northern Triangle, meeting with the Guatemalan president with a stated effort of addressing the root causes of illegal migration. And then nearly 6 months go by, and the Guatemalan president sits down with Fox News and claims he hasn't even been able to get on the phone with Kamala Harris since her trip to the Northern Triangle.
Other than your meeting with Kamala Harris in June?
That's the only one.
That is the only communication you've had with the Biden administration about illegal immigration?
Yep.
Does that strike you as being odd?
Bueno, con el embajador hablamos.
Well, we have had many conversations with your ambassador, but between my presidency and the White House, actually, no. I spoke once with Joe Biden because I introduced myself. Then we had the visit of Vice President Harris, and on matters of state, migration, we had the visit of Mr. Alejandro Mayorkas. But aside from that, direct communication, no. We haven't had it.
Does that seem like a reason to dislike or disapprove of Kamala Harris's job performance? I'd say that's pretty legitimate reason. Well then, on top of all of that I've showed you guys in this video, what about the fact that Kamala Harris's staff have been resigning in mass due to what's been described as a toxic work environment fostered by Kamala Harris herself? As the Washington Post reports, a Kamala Harris staff exodus reignites questions about her leadership style and her future ambitions. A former Kamala Harris staffer says aides have to endure a constant amount of soul-destroying criticism, report states. And so I leave you once again with the question, is criticism and dislike of Kamala Harris warranted? Or is it just born from a place of prejudice, racism, misogyny, and sexism? I don't know about you guys, but the answer seems pretty clear to me. That's the video, friends. Make sure to subscribe to the Clown World if you guys want more videos like this. Basically, everything that's not daily news coverage will be going here instead of the liberal hive mind. We'll try to have as much fun on this channel as possible. It's not just going to be serious documentary style stuff like this. So if you want to see more content from Clown World, make sure to subscribe down below, leave a comment, like, and I'll see you guys on the next one.